So we are going to share about our Holy Land trip, and I wanted to start by just introducing the folks who are part of that Holy Land team. And so if you are part of the team, would you stand? And I also have a slide that has the names of the folks. So we do have Jan Davis, a friend of Robin's, Debbie and Don Kolaski, myself. Judy McCabe Crudwig is currently in Egypt, and so she's not here today. Robin Olson, Nancy Reshak, Kelly Passano, Chris Young, and Teresa Young. And you will see in a lot of the pictures special guest Fred the Flamingo. So I think he's in the hallway enjoying some soup right now, but he'll be in later, perhaps. We do have also one picture of our group shot of the folks. So I know not everybody could be here today. So this is the whole crew that went to the Holy Land last February. And what an amazing group it has been, both while we were there and as we come back and as we reflect. So it's pretty awesome. So we have several things happening here, and we'll be done within an hour easy. We actually have one little thing to start with that is a little secret surprise, and it's kind of particularly geared toward Don. So this was a video that was taken worship night, and Dean had the great idea to put it to some pictures at the Holy Land trip. So let's go ahead, and we're going to start with this fun video.
Someday we'll roll away the stone that we have carried for so long, and all our burdens will be gone. I can't wait. We will find our way to an understanding of all views. No prayer shall be refused. I can't wait. It seems we have gone too far, and now I don't know where we are. I believe we will be guiding star. I can't wait. If faith is the final place where all our fears have been erased, rocks are flowing from the gates. I can't wait. Someday we'll roll away the stone that we have carried for so long. And all my burdens will be gone. I can't wait. We will find our way to an understanding of all views. No prayer shall be refused. I can't wait.
All right, so pretty awesome. Thank you, Dean, for putting that together. That was really cool. So I'm just going to describe, I'm soon going to be sitting down and others are going to be taking over. So, but just to give you kind of a sense of how we're going to go through this. And so anybody who went on our trip who was willing to share a little bit of reflection on video, we did that. And so Dean took all of our videos and we're going to be showing those. And also then I also asked who's willing to share in person live. And so we have 3 people who stepped up to that. So what we're going to do is Don is going to kick us off, and he's going to share a little bit, including introducing, there are 2 more videos, and actually 3. One's a little 1-minute thing that I'll do in a sec. But Don is going to kick off the first video, which is a segment of 4 folks from our trip, just reflecting on different aspects of the trip. And then Kelly is going to come up and share a little bit, and he's also going to introduce the second video, which has 5 folks from our trip reflecting again on their experience. And then Robin is going to kind of conclude our remarks from the team, and then we're going to close with kind of a closing song, a worshipful song. So that is our plan for this day. And so, but there's one thing that I'm going to do before I sit down. Dean also put together a map, which is like, yay! And so, this is it's a 1-minute animated map. So this is, you know how when I say things really fast, when it's time for announcements, that's what I'm going to do. We're going to play this map animation, and I'm very, very quickly probably going to get my tongue tied, but just to give you an overview of not every single place that we visited, but some of the major places, so you can kind of get a sense of it before we start talking about the different places. So let's go ahead and put that map up, and I will try to talk over it. Okay, so we started in Jordan, the country which is to the east of Israel. And Mount Nebo is the place that overlooks the promised land where Moses was. We went to Jerash in Jordan, also a very, very old city. Then we crossed the border of Jordan and Israel into Israel, went to places like Nazareth, which is where Jesus grew up. Then we went to the Sea of Galilee, tons of things all around the Sea of Galilee, on the sea, some of the places on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Tagba is a place where Jesus, the resurrected Christ, came to Peter, and there was this amazing forgiveness. We went down the Jordan River then and into Jericho, the lowest place on earth, and then up to Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives gives you this spectacular view of Jerusalem, so a lot of the shots you'll see from there. And then we went to various places in Jerusalem, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Via Dolorosa, Gethsemane is a place on the Mount of Olives. So that's kind of that's our trip in a minute. So there you go. All right. At this time, I want to invite Don forward, and he's going to share a little bit.
Thank you, Pastor Lori. Just to start off, I just wanted to say that we really, really, really appreciate Stillwater's Church as a family. It's great to come here every weekend and visit with you and hear the welcoming things that you say. But I do have to say something about Pastor Lori. It was really hard for Kelly and I to keep her under control on this trip, and Fred. Between the 2 of them, we just... Right, Kelly? I mean, it was just amazing. It was a lot of work. Yeah. Because she only fell asleep once in the bus, and we can't show that to you today, but I'm sure Dean will find that at some point with her sleeping. But boy, she was like ever ready bunny, just kind of keep going. So I'm going to set Fred right there. Well, if he stays, there we go. Fred was an integral part of our trip because of the youth, and we wanted to make sure that we took enough pictures with him in the right places at the right time. We were very conscious also of not overdoing Fred in some of the more sacred places because we just didn't want to distract anybody from there. But he was, and he's in some secret spots. We have some interesting places we put him, so it'll be fun to see what they do with the youth and Fred. I'm going to be introducing basically 4 snippets, 4 video vignettes of some of the folks that went on our pilgrimage. And Judy, who is in Egypt right now, she did come home with us, but she wanted to go back for some more excitement and see some of the sights. But she's going to be starting off in this first video segment. And, you know, on our trip, Pastor Lori commented we went to Mount Nebo and several other locations. And I'm not going to repeat all those different things, but we have Judy sharing her reflections here coming up, and the burial place of Moses as well. So we're going to talk about Mount Nebo. We're going to talk about all these different locations. And again, Judy will do the first segment. The second video segment that you'll see will be of Nancy, sharing her experiences and remembering her baptism at the Jordan River. You know, all of us at some point, we could tell as we went through this process, each of us had special moments throughout the trip. And some of us, it was very intense, and others, it was just hard to speak about, and it was just a great opportunity. The third video segment is going to be my lovely bride, Debbie. She hates it when I say bride because we've been married 39 years. This year in June, we get to celebrate 40. And when I'm teaching classes, I tell my students, because I teach adults, that I've been happily married for 39 years, Debbie. But I tell my students they better ask her because she might have a different opinion in regards to that. But with that being said, Debbie's going to then reflect on her experiences at the Sea of Galilee. We did stay, it was great. We had a hotel. We could see the Sea of Galilee out our windows. All of us had a great view. And it's interesting, the Sea of Galilee is roughly 13 miles long by 7 miles wide. And Jesus spent a lot of his time there, and the fishermen there, including Jesus, would travel the Sea of Galilee, and they would cross the Sea of Galilee. So if you can imagine having a small ship, maybe rowing it 13 miles one way or 7 miles the other way, it's quite an amazing experience. Our fourth video segment that you'll get to see when I'm done talking here is really the place of the Mount of Beatitudes. And if you think about where Jesus spent quite a bit of time in this area, it's the longest recorded sermon that we hear from him, which is quite interesting. The sermon is recorded in Matthews 5 through 7, and Pastor Lori talked about that today if you were staying awake during her presentation and homily. But we'll hear part of that sermon that I had an opportunity to share. And, you know, blessed are the, and you hear those words, and I hope it brings some meaning to you as well. And the word beatitude literally means the blessed. So, without any further ado,
we began our journey with a stop at Mount Nebo in Jordan, where we saw an overview of the entire region. From this spot, we got a beautiful perspective of the mountain range, the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea, the deserts, the hills of Jericho, the Temple Mount of Jerusalem, and the Mediterranean Sea far, far off in the distance. We were reminded that God brought Moses to this mountain to view the Promised Land. After roaming through the desert for long time, God showed this land to his chosen people where they hoped to live in peace and harmony. This land was anticipated and revered by generations and generations who believed in God's grace and his promise. So many people of faith has been inspired by this region. The Israeli Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians of all denominations have come together here over thousands of years to live, work, pray, and celebrate in their own way. This area inspired in me a renewed understanding of the universality of all of these belief systems and of the substantial similarity and roots of our common faith. I certainly felt God's presence there. On the mountaintop, we also visited the ruins of an ancient structure that over many generations had been used as a temple, a mosque, and a church, a holy place for people of so many differing practices of their faith. This reminded me again of the universality of our belief in a loving, beneficent, powerful, and yet merciful God. It was easy to see how the prophets of ancient times, Moses, David, Muhammad, the disciples, and Jesus, were impacted and united in a belief so strong that it's changed our world and challenged us each to live a more God-centered life. I hope that some generation will be able to live with the diversity of beliefs and practices of faiths, so that indeed there can be a promised land where peace, acceptance, and love for each other is more the norm. Thank you. The journey was a joy and an inspiration for me.
And I remember one of my early times of getting to know Lori, being in her office and seeing this picture of her baptizing this man on the Jordan River. And from that day forward, I had said to her, oh man, I would just love to have that experience sometime. So when I found out we were going, my instant response was, is this something that I could do or you would do for me here? And I was just really excited about the prospect of being able to actually be in a place, a approximation of a place where Jesus had been, and being able to have that experience. So we come upon the river and go down along the bank, and I found in certain situations, in certain places in Israel, where I just would find myself being able to kind of transport myself from the here and now to just, I don't know, another plateau of life. I don't really know how to describe it. But I'm standing there along the river before we did the remembrance of baptism, just looking up and down the river and thinking to myself, this is what Jesus would have seen. This is what he would have experienced. You know, every molecule might not be the same, but this is, you know, it's as close as I can get to being anywhere near being able to experience being able to have been a part of listening or hearing Jesus share a message with people. So I found myself intensely touched and emotional just looking around the surroundings. It's so easy when you get to certain places to just close out anything that might not have been there in the past, and just kind of, I just found myself in that moment. And then when Lori came and came alongside the river and dipped her hand in the water and put it on my head, it was just a really deep feeling inside of me, the experience of that moment that I find hard to describe in words, but it was truly reached into my soul.
One of my most meaningful and touching experiences when we visited the Holy Land was the Sea of Galilee. And we had come from Jordan, up along the Jordan River, and got to our hotel in Galilee when it was dark. So we got into our room and I looked out and all I could see was darkness, knowing the Sea of Galilee was out there somewhere, but I couldn't see it. So I was very excited and woke very early in the morning and watched the sunrise and got to see the Sea of Galilee with the sun rising over the top of it. It was the most amazing experience, knowing, oh my gosh, I'm here, it's right here in front of me. And just knowing all the things that Jesus did and performed all the miracles around the Sea of Galilee. We took a boat ride where we actually got to go down on the Sea of Galilee, and we had we're fortunate enough to have our captain also sing, and sang contemporary praise music while we were on the boat. And I just sat there. I mean, we went out quite a bit, and then he shut the motor off and he sang. I looked out over the water and just took it all in, and I could feel the Holy Spirit coming down on me and felt like Jesus was right there. Like he could have just walked across the water to me like he did to Peter back in those days. And it was so powerful and so touching for me. All the miracles that he did there when Peter was walking, he said, Lord, is that really you? If it is so, then let me too walk on the water. And but then he did, but then of course he looked away from Jesus and started to sink. And it reminds me of our own faith and how when we take our eyes off of Jesus and we start to look at other things and we don't have our trust and faith in God, that we too start to fail and sink and fall away, and we have to pull ourselves back up and closer to Him.
We're going to take a moment to read a verse from Matthew 5, the Beatitudes. So when he saw the crowds, he went up on the hills. And when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Opening his lips, he taught them. Blessed are they who know their spiritual poverty, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called God's sons. Blessed are those persecuted on account of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they slander and persecute you falsely, accuse you of every wrong because of me. Be glad and supremely joyful, because in heaven your reward is rich.
Okay, so for the next and final video is kind of comprised of 5 different segments, and so we thought we would just do a little introduction to each of those as we move forward. So first of all, you're going to hear from Don Kolowski reflecting on a place called Jerash, and Jerash was in Jordan. And Don's going to share, and there's a picture there on your screen as kind of that main, would have been kind of the main street. If you think of that as kind of the main street in town, and it was lined with these very large pillars. And as well, other roads that were going north and south were also lined. And so Jerash is in Jordan, and Don's going to share those pictures of kind of what we found there, or what we saw. And we can kind of even picture today, perhaps, Jesus there during that time as he was kind of teaching and walking through the city. So it was a very interesting place to see. Second of all, Pastor Lori and Teresa are going to share reflections on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And on this site, this is where the resurrected Christ came to the disciples, including Peter, and he had asked Peter 3 times if Peter loved him. And this was reminiscent of the time that Peter denied Jesus. as Jesus was being led away to be crucified. Now, the church on this site that you're looking at on that previous slide is called the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter. So inside of that church is a rock, and Jesus has been called Peter the Rock, as we are reminded that even when we fail and deny Jesus, with each failure, we have the opportunity to turn our heart back and declare our love for Christ and for God. And it was a very powerful site of forgiveness. So the next site after that is called the Dome of the Rock. And this is the center of Jerusalem. So that's what you're looking at on the screen now. That would be the Dome of the Rock. That is in the center of Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. And this is the first thing that you see when you're standing on Mount of Olives. So as you're looking down from the Mount of Olives, where he would have taken the donkey down the path, the Garden of Gethsemane, and you see the Kidron Valley, and that's kind of what you're looking at right off the mountaintop. So very, very cool to be there and standing there in that same site. And the Dome of the Rock is significant for three faiths: the Jewish faith, the Muslim faith, and the Christian faith. And that's probably a class in itself to learn about all those differences. So we won't do that today, but I'm sure we'll have a chance to learn more about it. But for the Jews in Jesus' time, this was the site of the temple. And I think we have a slide which would show the Temple Mount at the time when Jesus was there. So if you're looking on your left, that center area, where kind of that concrete structure is, that is the temple on the temple court. And current day, where the dome is, that golden dome, that would have been that center area there during Jesus' time. Okay? And the temple, just to get a little understanding, the temple was first built by King Solomon around 1000 BC, a couple years ago. And if there's one date in history that Lori always says, if you remember anything, remember this date. Do you know what date it is?
587.
Okay, I got 586, but so close. So what is 586? What was that date? 587. Okay, 587. The Babylonian exile, right? That was when Jerusalem would have been destroyed, and they would have been, folks here would have been exiled to Babylonia. Now, it was rebuilt as recorded in the books of Nehemiah around 515 BC. Now, Jesus spent a lot of time teaching in the temple courts. I think as I was standing, just to express that, as I was standing kind of on the Mount of Olives, the first thing that came to my mind is, he's headed down. He knew why he was headed there, right? He was heading down. He knew what was going to happen. The first thing that kind of flashed back to me was when he was, maybe the story, because maybe we just read it in Luke. I think I wrote down like Luke 2, 41 through 52. That was where Jesus, he was 12 years old. You guys know the scripture? He was 12 years old. They went on the pilgrimage. That would have been Passover, right? They would have went to Jerusalem. If you remember, they were leaving. Mary and Joseph were leaving. There was a big group of relatives and friends, and they were heading back out. And if you remember, Jesus wasn't there, right? They couldn't find Jesus. Oh my gosh, we lost our kid. And I think it took them 3 days for them to find it. And what was his response? Well, wouldn't you know that I was in my Father's house? And so he was at the temple. So the first thing that kind of came to my mind was kind of that. And maybe that was just very relevant to, because we were just reading that before Easter. But I was kind of thinking that even as a young age, he was already showing all his signs of wisdom and teaching. And then obviously knowing what he was going there as his last time. So the temple was then destroyed again about 70 AD. so 70 years after the death of Jesus and his resurrection. And then in the late 600s, not sure of an exact date, AD, the Muslim Dome of the Rock was built. So that golden dome was built on the same site. So therefore, there's very much significance between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And so we'll talk a lot more about that in the coming months. The Western Wall, if you looked back at that, okay, this one will work. But you're looking at the eastern side. As you stand on the Mount of Olives, you're looking at the eastern side of the city. So the Western Wall is the only remaining portion of the original Mount, the Temple Mount. And that's called the Western Wall, or what they call the Wailing Wall. And we were there, and when we had to go there, men have to go on one side, and women have to go on another side, and it's kind of separated by another wall. And so men on one side, women on the other, they can't be together. And the wall, and what they're doing there is they're praying on the wall, and I think and they also write their prayers on these notes, and they put those notes into the cracks of the wall. And those are huge, just to get a significance of how big those blocks are. Those things must be 10,000, I know they're huge. Must be 5-6 feet going this way, 3-4 feet up, but they have to weigh significant, and they're all seamed. There's no caulking, there's nothing, no grout to hold them together. It's brick by brick, and that was significant to kind of see the wall construction. Then there was a bar mitzvah that was going on at the time that we were there as well, and there was women and I'm sure mom, and they were throwing candy over from the other side. You just saw faces as they could just reach over the top, and the men on one side. So it was kind of interesting to see. Now, one of the things with that is most tourist groups or church groups, they don't have the privilege of entering the Dome of the Rock, but we had that opportunity, which was really cool. And remember, I said there's that golden dome, right? We call that the Dome of the Rock, and today that's a mosque. If you go in there, it was Muslims. You would go in there to pray. Now, we had the opportunity to go into that center area, and I think a lot of that was really with the group that we went with. Peter Miano, he's a founder of the Society for Biblical Studies, and I guess he had said he's been taking groups there for over 30 years. And this was the first time that he has been able to take groups under the dome. So some groups have been able to go into the dome, but not under the dome. So we've had the opportunity to actually go under the dome, which would have been the stables, the King Solomon stables at the time. So we actually got to go down through a different mosque under the whole slab. If you think about that whole temple court, nobody has gotten to go down there in over his 30 years. So we felt very fortunate with the connections that he's made with the guides and the people that he used, that was really powerful, and we got the opportunity to do that. So you'll hear more about that. Next, you're going to hear Robin's reflections at the site of the crucifixion in Jerusalem. And there's a church built there called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Probably didn't say that right, but pretty close. And then finally, you're going to hear Nancy's reflections on her experience on the Sea of Galilee as we were on the boat. And again, the place of so much of Jesus' ministry, including the walking on water, and also Peter walking on water as well. So I think that's what my part, so I think we want to cut to the video.
And one of the places that we stopped at and we visited was a very ancient city called Jerash. And the city itself is 5,000 years old. And as we entered this area to really come into what would have been the main gate, one of many main gates, it's a huge arch, it has 3 entrances to it. And as I entered this area, I started kind of trying to put myself in the mindset, if you will, of what was it like Jesus walking down this path, the hustle and bustle of the city at that moment in time. I realized, you know what, this is where Jesus would have walked. This is where he would have lived. And then again, putting myself in the mindset of what was this like? You know, what was that experience? And, you know, he spent about 3 years of his life preaching and changing the way we would think about things in our faith. And it was just like that aha moment. It's like the gates opened up in heaven and you get that kind of thing. It was just so surreal. You know, the sharing that we did, some of the Bible scriptures and discussions we had, just put me in a totally different mindset. And for a short time, while we were walking down this pathway and seeing the different buildings, the structures that are still standing there, I just felt like I was there. It's like I could hear the people walking through, the kids running around, and trying to imagine Jesus standing there talking to, you know, several hundred people, describing what heaven is going to be like, and what his goal was to save, you know, the lost and help those individuals that needed guidance. And we look at Luke that we're studying right now, and you realize he was there to help all those individuals and not follow the rules to some degree.
One of the nice spots that also had meaning to me was when, after Jesus was resurrected, he met Peter at the Sea of Galilee, and there was this quaint little church there that was representative of Peter the Rock. That's what Jesus called Peter. And from John 21, where Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and the question Jesus kept asking Peter is, "Do you love me?" And Peter would respond, "Yes, you know I love you." And then he asked him again, "Jesus, do you love me? Do you love me?" And he said, "Yes, of course I love you." And then Jesus asked again, "Jesus, do you love me?" And finally, Peter responded, "Yes, Lord, I love you." Why are you asking me that? He was getting a little frustrated. And I think what that is representative of is when Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. Peter denied him 3 times before the rooster crowed in the morning. And as soon as the 3rd time came, Jesus was arrested. Yeah. And then Peter realized that he had just denied 3 times the love.
Yeah, so this is a very powerful place for me as well, and partly because it's a reminder that no matter how many times we fail, so he had 3 very clear times, Jesus continues to say, you have another chance to say I love you. And so we have another chance. And so in this little church, there is a rock to remind you that Peter is the rock, and to remind you of this scene in John 21 where you can kneel down and you can pray and you can kind of acknowledge, I failed again, but I still love you. So we really appreciate it. And we had Teresa read the scripture from John 21 at the Sea of Galilee in that area.
When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The 3rd time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Here ends the reading.
Had the opportunity to go inside the dome, and that was only because the group that we were with had some relations with the folks there. That nobody tends to get in there. Nobody's been in there, I guess, from other groups. So this is like the first time that our groups have been allowed to go into the Dome of the Rock. But when you go in there, it's like a mosque today. It's where Muslims go and pray. Jews can't pray in there. We had to take our shoes off. But there's actually a physical rock. It's a foundation rock. So that's when we talk about the rock or the foundation rock. And underneath there's actually like a cave. And I looked that up, and it was like the Cave of the Souls. It's just an incredible presence to physically be there and to be invited in there to see what that was about. And we went into the other mosque. We got to go under the temple, which would have been King Solomon's stables at the time. Now that's all been redone, and it's like a place for prayer, but it was just incredible. We had the opportunity to kind of go into places where others had not.
When we were on the Israel trip, there were so many things that were so meaningful. Just being in the same area where Jesus was amazing. I think I spent most of my trip crying. But two of the most amazing things to me were walking down the road that Jesus rode down on the donkey. It's very steep. There's tombs on one side that go forever, and it is just, it's unbelievable. It's so historic and meaningful. But then when we went to the church where he was crucified and entombed, it was our tour guide, Bert, was more of a biblical scholar than a tour guide. And he explained to us how Jesus was crucified, the atrocities he had to go through. And I know we all know about the crucifixion, and we have it in our mind what it is. It's 20 times worse. I don't know how another human being can do that to somebody. And then he also pointed out that over on the side there's the wall of the temple, and there's an arch in there that would have been a doorway. Well, this arch is probably where the cross was placed, because they wanted to make this crucifixion very public, so people walking by in the road would notice it and be horrified by it, and not do what the people that were being crucified did, which of course does not apply to Jesus. But it was so emotional and so horrifying. It was just horrifying. A moment I will never forget, and something that will change me forever.
When we took the boat tour on the Sea of Galilee, we got on the boat. I was, anticipating, oh, this is going to be cool. We get to go on this boat. We're on the Sea of Galilee. We start to pull away from the dock, and for whatever reason, I just felt this really strong urge to just very much separate myself from anybody else and just find a place that was very much in solitude on that boat. And I was sitting on the side of the boat, looking out into the water. And the things that most graphically I can remember is looking out into that water and seeing, it was a beautiful sunny day, seeing the sun glisten off of the water, look like diamonds or a stairway to heaven, the pattern that it created in the water. And it's going to sound odd, but as I was just sitting there and I was listening to the waves and I was It was like nothing else existed at that moment except me and the water and the knowledge that this is a place, again, that Jesus had walked and been. And when I looked into the pattern of the sunlight, it looked like footsteps in the water. And it was, I don't know how to describe that, and I don't know what I was really seeing, but that's what I saw and that's what I felt, and I immediately started to cry. And it just, again, brought everything so real to all the things that we read in the Bible. It was no longer print on a paper. It was an experience that transcends understanding.
A moment I will never forget, and something that will change me forever. Hi, I asked to conclude this presentation just to let you know how walking in Jesus' footsteps has changed me spiritually forever. I mean, how can you not be changed when you're in the area where Christ was brutally crucified? For us. Also, how can you not be changed in how you read the Bible when you see the areas that you're reading about, when you can picture the landscape, you can picture the cities, you can picture the horrible terrain, the rough terrain. It's amazing. I do hope to return to the Holy Land probably again and again, because you can't possibly take it all in just a few short days. But I do want to encourage you, if you are able, to take this trip yourself to the Holy Land. Walk in Jesus' footprints yourself, because you will be forever changed also.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, team. And that was a beautiful segue into, in my mind, I was thinking, and we were talking about this on the way home, these trips are offered pretty much every year. And one thought was maybe every couple of years we have a trip offered to go to the Holy Land. And on the other years, there are other trips that are also biblical trips, like the one Judy's on now to Egypt, and next year I think it's Italy. And so if there's a particular, call in your life, you might think about that and pray about that in the future, and that will be things that are offered again. So very, very, very powerful for all of us. This was my third time, and it gets better and better, really does.